Welcome to the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. Are you over 40 and tired of struggling with your weight? Do you feel like you're constantly starting over with your nutrition and fitness? I'm Lil, a certified nutrition coach and former registered nurse, and I too have been there. At the age of 44, I decided I was done with being stuck in the vicious diet cycle. I became a nutrition coach and created the Feel Your Best Formula for women who are ready to do things differently. If you're ready to build a better relationship with food, get your energy back, build muscle, lose fat, and keep it off for good, then you're in the right place. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's build your formula for feeling your best. Hello, welcome to the Feel Your Best Formula. I'm Lil, and today we are going to have part one of my series on gaining weight during the holidays. And we're going to talk about it. Like, why does this happen? I know what you really want to know is how can I prevent this from happening? But we need to have an honest conversation about it because I know the typical diet and fitness industry messaging during this time can be incredibly fear-mongering. It can be frustrating. And I know that a lot of our own issues, our own disordered eating patterns and thought patterns around food can really, this time of year, it can just really come up for us and it can be a real struggle. So I decided to make this a multi-part series because part one here, I just want to acknowledge and dive into a little bit the reality of how the holiday season can affect your overall long-term fat gain. And yes, it is a real thing that the holidays do have a major impact on people gaining fat and keeping that fat gain on their bodies. So we're going to talk about why that happens. And we're also going to talk about some mindset shifts and adopting a mindset that can help you navigate this season with enjoyment and kind of letting go of the guilt and the negative feelings that we might carry with us when it comes to our food choices. The thing is, it is a cycle. It is a pattern. I mean, that is what a calendar is, right? It's a repeated pattern where every year you go through these 12 months, and depending on where you are in life, it might look the same for many years, and then you kind of make a shift as things change in your own life and in your family dynamics and things like that. And the holidays is a time of year when our bodies are most likely to gain weight. And when these long-term studies have been done asking why, as a society, is everyone getting really overweight and why is this, an epidemic? What they see is that there are these sort of clustered periods of time where we tend to overeat within a shorter window of time where we are consuming more calories than our body needs, which then causes our body to store those extra calories as fat. And you're having these sort of clustered periods of time where this is happening on a frequent basis to the point that your body gains that fat, and then ultimately it stays with you. And then you have another period of time, whether it's the holiday season, or perhaps it could be for you, it might be the summer. Most likely it's not a 1 week vacation. It could be, but what they see is that the holiday season is truly a period of time when a lot of people are, putting a deposit, if you will, into their long-term fat gain, where you have just sort of a spike in your body holding on to fat during this time. And you might be the type of person where you're kind of into cyclical dieting, where then in January you go and you try to lose the weight, and then maybe it comes back on in the summer or the holidays or whatever. And you are, if that's you, then you're probably stuck in this cycle of diet culture. But it's important to understand that, yeah, the scale might be going up during the holidays. Maybe between October and January, the scale is going up 7, 8 pounds, something like that, which I think is the average, the typical gain that you're going to see on the scale. But understanding that isn't necessarily, again, 7 or 8 pounds of fat. Maybe it's 2, 3, 4 pounds of fat, and then you're having the excess water weight because of the habits, like eating more carbs, drinking more alcohol, not having as much sleep, things like that. So we understand on the Feel Your Best Formula podcast that scale weight does not equal fat gain, fat loss on a daily basis. But over time, if the scale is consistently trending up, then we do understand there's an underlying fat gain, or it could be muscle gain if your habits are supporting muscle gain. It could be that, but also the scale going down is indicative of fat loss if that's on a long-term basis. But on a day-to-day basis, we are not gaining and losing 1, 2, 3, 4 pounds of fat. That is water weight fluctuations. And what we're talking about today is not the water weight. We're talking about the actual fat that your body's going to hang on to if you are consuming calories in excess during this window of time where it's causing your body to hold on to those extra calories as fat. So I hope that makes sense. If you're understanding that other periods of time in your life during the course of the calendar year where you're in maybe a schedule and routine where you're only going out to eat once a week, you're only drinking alcohol once a week, and then all of a sudden you're in the holiday season and these things are happening much more frequently on top of, if you watch football, maybe on Sundays you're consuming a lot of calories and having some beers and things like that. So there's just a lot going on this time of year when it comes to food. And then also, especially if you live in a climate like where I do in New England, where it starts getting colder, maybe your kids' activities, maybe they went from, playing sports outdoors where you're walking around and getting more movement in, to not doing as much. There's a difference between walking. Sometimes you have to walk a half mile to a soccer field versus just walking inside a gym to sit and watch a basketball game. These activities add up. And if you're not getting outside for walks and your activity level is decreasing while your food consumption is increasing, then this is an imbalance that's going to cause you to gain fat. And so we can have sort of this multi-prong attack coming at us where you might not even be aware of it. You might think to yourself, oh, I'm doing all the same things that I normally do. And you might not be seeing how having 2 or 3 glasses of wine 3 nights a week versus one is adding all those extra calories in addition to maybe your food choices when you're having social events are definitely going to be different than your food choices when you're in a regular routine and you are in control of your menu and your schedule and all of those things. So I hope that makes sense to you. If you just look at it objectively and think to yourself, yeah, it kind of makes sense why the average person does gain a few pounds of fat over the course of the holiday season. And then you have to ask yourself, like I said, because we can get into the cycle of diet culture where maybe during the holiday season, you start to feel it. Your pants are getting tighter, and then you start to feel this pressure of, oh my gosh, January's coming. I need a reboot. I need to do a cleanse. I need to go on this diet. I need to get my act together. And then out of desperation, you jump into a fad diet. You maybe even lose a bunch of weight, not necessarily fats, but you lose a bunch of weight. The scale goes down. You feel like you're doing better. And because it's a fad diet and it's unsustainable, you just kind of go back to your regular life. And then what happens is you have another situation where you're over consuming food in a short window of time and you gain weight. And it's this up, down, up, down, up, down, rather than what I feel is a healthier way of managing things, which is understanding it's all about choices. It's about choosing what your lifestyle is and just creating more balance. And it doesn't mean restriction, but maybe sticking to the habits that create that equilibrium where your calories in and your calories out are pretty much balanced, and not being in this pattern where you're seeing this constant uptick in the scale because you're gaining fat. Because at the end of the day, over the course of those 12 months, you've consumed more calories than your body needed, and your body has decided to store that extra energy as fat. So I hope that, this part one, like I said, like it is important to understand this, and it's not being fat phobic. It's not, I'm not sitting here telling you you need to diet and you can't have any Halloween candy and you should be counting your calories on Thanksgiving. I am not saying that at all. I am saying completely objectively, without emotion, there's a very high chance you are going to gain body fat over the holiday season, and you're going to continue to do that year in and year out unless you acknowledge it, unless you become aware of it, unless you start becoming aware of your habits. Because I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think there's a strong chance that during the holiday season, we kind of give ourselves mentally like a little vacation where we're trying to convince ourselves our habits don't count and the calories don't count. And we're thinking, okay, January is going to come and I will just fix all of these things that I know are kind of sending things in the wrong direction. I'll just get my act together in January. And maybe that works for you, but if it doesn't, then listening to this little mini holiday series I have for you, I hope that will give you strategies and help empower you so that you can start to break free of this cycle. And also not, I don't want you to just sort of float through life and let life happen to you. It is that's the easier route, to just kind of drift along and sort of be a victim to circumstances, to not really think about things. We can say we want things to change. We can say we want to feel better. We can say, oh, I need to improve. I know I need to eat better. Oh, I know I need to start working out. But there's a lot of people that say that for a very long time and never actually do it. And I don't want you to be that person. I want you to be the person who decides to become the person that has an awareness, a mindfulness, and an intention to your eating habits, the way you treat your body, your movement, your fitness, and really respecting this body. Because if you're like me, I'm going to be pushing 50 soon. And the older we get, the more aware we are of how fragile this life is and how fragile our health can be. And it's absolutely never, ever too late to just pick up a set of weights, start walking more, start eating more veggies, start eating more protein, start drinking more water. Like, it's not that complicated. And the problem is we live in this society, especially during the holiday season, where you're going to just be bombarded with so much toxic messaging. And you're going to want to do things and then you're going to feel bad about it. And I know I don't have to explain this to you because you've lived it for however many decades, but I would love for you to feel better about your choices and your habits this holiday season. I used to have so much guilt on, say Thanksgiving or Christmas and or going out to social events and things like that. Because I think at the end of the day, I didn't feel empowered about my choices, and empowerment comes with knowledge. And now that I understand what my choices mean, what they ultimately mean in the moment and for the long term, it helps me make decisions that I feel good about. But when you have uncertainty and when you feel disempowered because you feel like you can only be healthy when you're following very strict rules or someone else is telling you what to do, then that doesn't work so well when you are living your day to day life and you have to make decisions. And we make so many choices every single day about what foods we're going to eat and how we are spending our time. So, when it comes to understanding the importance of that awareness and mindfulness during the holiday season, I want to help you create a mindset of doing things differently in 2024. So, I want to give you some food for thought before I wrap this up. But let's start with there are no good or bad foods. We just have to understand that some foods have more nutrition and nourishing components to them, and other foods might taste really good, but they're not actually giving our body anything that our body is going to be able to use in a positive way. And it doesn't mean that those less nourishing foods are harmful to us. It doesn't mean that we should never eat them, but we should start to figure out how much of that food makes sense for me. And am I nourishing my body correctly in a way that's going to support my overall health and wellness by eating enough of the nourishing foods? And also, the amount of calories that I'm eating on an average basis, is that matching what my body needs in terms of functioning and energy and all of that stuff? So instead of moving away from good and bad foods, it's more of an understanding of the balance of choices that works for us to support our overall health and wellness goals. And just accepting the fact that energy balance exists just the same way, every single mammal on the planet. I don't know if fish and reptiles and whatnot, I mean, their metabolisms move a little differently, but for us warm-blooded mammals, energy balance is where it's at. If you have a dog that is overweight, the vet's going to tell you cut back on the food, increase the activity. And the same rules apply for us. So if you are over consuming all this food and you're decreasing your activity, you're going to be just like your dog and the pounds are going to creep on. So understanding that and being aware of it is the first step to being empowered to create the outcome that you want at the end of the day. Also, this time of year can also, I think, be really triggering for some of us that have struggled with a restrict binge approach to our eating, where maybe you've been restricting for months and months, you've been on a diet all summer, and then all of a sudden the holiday season comes and you almost just see this as a free-for-all to get back into binging and having less control. And I just think that family dynamics, and all kinds of things can come up during the holiday season. We can have emotions of grief and loss and all kinds of things that maybe we don't even really think about other parts of the year that can then influence emotional eating, eating food for comfort, binge eating, and things like that. And again, having an awareness is the first step to feeling empowered and then creating control over these situations that ultimately we don't feel good about. I also think something to think about is the difference between what you consider your lifestyle and what would be, one off social events, things that are just not part of your regular lifestyle. And this is something I talk about with my clients because I've had clients that travel a lot. I had one client where her her career just requires that she travels all over the place internationally. There is not, like, inconsistency is her consistency, and sometimes she doesn't even know that she's getting up and traveling and going somewhere exotic within the next day or so. So as much as we wanted to create habits that would work in this ideal scenario where you're at home and you're waking up in your own bed and you're eating breakfast in your own kitchen, and then you're going into the same office, and then you're coming home and you can do a workout and all of that. That's yes, is that what her regular day-to-day life looks like when she's at home? Yes, but then when you look at the fact that she's traveling at least 50% of the time, then guess what? That's her lifestyle. And we have to create strategies that match the reality of what you're doing most of the time. And if your lifestyle constantly includes overeating calories and not working out and not getting good sleep and not getting steps in, then that is an unhealthy lifestyle and you have to acknowledge it. And even though you might be doing really fun things, you could have someone else who's traveling all the time. And I've had this experience too, where it's someone, they pack their foods, they know what foods to bring with them in their suitcase, they know what types of foods to purchase to keep in the hotel room. They know what type of foods to order on the menu, and they stick to that the same way that they would stick to those habits at home. And they really put an effort in, instead of throwing their hands in the air and saying, "Oh, I can't control any of this. This isn't my normal habitat." Because they understand this is a lifestyle, and just because I'm traveling for work or traveling for pleasure, it doesn't mean I'm off the hook. The habits that I have today, they're going to follow me when I go home. And I think that we can get into that mindset again where we think habits don't count, calories don't count, there's nothing I can do about it in this situation. And I 100% support you enjoying and having, a fabulous meal, and really, not doing things like tracking your food when it is a truly special event. But if your lifestyle is special event day in and day out, that is not going to be conducive to a healthy long-term lifestyle if you're doing that most of the time. And when you look at calorie consumption, when it comes to fat gain over time and fat loss over time, you're generally looking 10% to 15% tends to be the number that gets thrown around. If you want to lose fat, then you want to be taking 15 to 20% of your daily calories off of your plate, literally. And if you're finding yourself gaining weight over time, you're probably eating at least 10 to 20% more calories than your body needs on a long-term basis. So here's a way I want to help you break this down and start thinking about this. If we think of a month as being 30 days, 10% of that would be 3 days out of the month. So we want to acknowledge that if we are over consuming calories more than 3 days out of the month, then most likely we are starting to head into lifestyle territory where over consuming calories is part of your lifestyle versus something that's just happening 10% of the time. Does that make sense? Because I know you're going to be like, well, what does that, what does this mean? Lifestyle versus special events. I have a special event every week. Well, if you have a special event every week, then maybe you need to pick and choose what are the special events or special eating food choice events, I guess, is how we want to look at this. Like, times when maybe you can't control the food choices as much, or there are food choices that you just know are out of alignment with your overall health and wellness goals. We'll talk about strategies in part 2, but right now, let's just acknowledge that you got to figure out, what is your lifestyle? Are you overeating calories 3 or 4 days a week? How many days a week are you actually getting 5K, 8K steps in per day? Or are you getting like 2 or 3K steps in per day? What is your lifestyle? Because it is ultimately your lifestyle that's going to impact those long-term results, right? So I'm going to leave it there, let you think about, if I looked over the course of the past 30 days, what does that even look like? How many times have I done a workout? How many days out of that month am I getting up and moving and making sure that I'm making use of the calories that I'm consuming? And just get an idea of where you're at, and then understanding if you're going to increase the days that you're over consuming calories, then you are definitely going to start seeing weight gain. And I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty detail, especially right now, about the difference between muscle gain, fat gain, and all of that. The chances that the scale would be going up for you because you're gaining muscle would mean that you already have a very clear understanding of how to make that happen, and you're following a very concrete plan to make that happen. So please also don't try to convince yourself that you're gaining muscle and that's why the scale is going up, unless you are working with a coach, following a plan, and have a very clear understanding of how to make that happen. All right. I hope that this gets you thinking, and I hope you're excited for part 2, because that's where we're what you want. I know you want to talk about, what do I do? How do I fix this? How do I make things different this year than last year? That's going to be in part 2, which will be next week. So make sure to tune in, and I will be back here hopefully probably next Monday. I'm getting back into a better schedule after having things be a little messy for a while there, but I've been consistent on the Monday mornings the past couple of weeks. So that is my goal moving forward. All right. Have a great week, and you can always reach out to me if you have any questions. Just make sure to include your email if you send me a message through your podcast platform, okay? Because I can't respond unless you send me your email. All right. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode of the Feel Your Best Formula podcast. If you enjoyed the information and discussion we had here today, then make sure to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. If you're serious about making changes with your nutrition and fitness, then you definitely want to join my weekly newsletter list as well. You can find the link below and more information in the episode details. That's all for today, and we will see you back here next week for a new episode of the Feel Your Best Formula podcast.